Hi, it's Mary Kelsey. We're over here at the Whirling Thunder Kitchen. We're here to send out some information on how to manage your meat bundles when you receive them from the Winnebago Tribe. We have Sue McLaughlin with us. If you could share a little bit about yourself, Sue.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and diabetes educator that works here in Winnebago. And we're just, like Mary said, we're going to give you some healthy tips and ways to be sure that you pack those freezers in your home really well. We both work with the Food Security Work Group and Food Sovereignty Task Force, so this is kind of part of that whole thing by the Winnebago community to help the community become food sovereign. So we're really excited to be giving you some tips on how to make that work.
Yep. Okay. If I could get a freezer bag. First, we're going to start out with a chicken dish, and this one's really quick and easy to prepare. I have the fresh chicken breast. When you receive your chicken from the bundle, more likely it's going to be frozen. So we're going to have you thaw your meat out so you can cut it into strips like this. And these you're probably just going to want to brown with olive oil. So we're going to start out by putting our chicken in here.
And one of the things
we're going to add all these lemons. Go ahead, Sue.
One of the things too to just think about when you're thawing that chicken is there are 3 recommended ways to do it. One of them is to put it in a pot of cold water and change out that cold water every 30 minutes until it's thawed, and then either freeze it right away or cook it right away. Another thing is that you can thaw it in your fridge. And what is the third one? I just forgot the third one there. You can microwave it, of course. But if you do that, as you probably found out if you've done it before, you find out that some of the meat might get cooked. So if you do it that way, you need to be sure that you cook your chicken breast right away.
Right, and then when microwaving, use a glass container and try to cover it somewhat so you don't have a big old mess in your microwave.
Yes, that's very important as well. So then, like Mary did, she just put some great spices on and herbs. And you know what we encourage you to do with that is to just not feel like you have to do anything in particular. Just try some different mixtures. We were talking earlier, like one of the things I use is I take rosemary and thyme or rosemary and garlic and rub that on there. And just find out what your family likes. Sometimes I use sage, a whole bunch of different things. Cayenne pepper if you guys like it a little bit spicier, but don't hesitate to just try some different things. You can't go wrong. What they recommend is that we all start with a small amount and build on there, because you might have members of your family that don't like as much spice or don't like as strong a flavor. So whenever you cook it, that really enhances those herbs that you're using. And another great thing about using herbs is that you then leave out the salt. And so, because so many families need to watch their intake of salt for blood pressure reasons, this is a really great way. The rubs are a really great way to season the meat.
I labeled it and I put a date on there so that you can either put it in the freezer or put it in the refrigerator no more than 2 days, and then cook it at your convenience. You could do, I don't like to put chicken in a slow cooker because it'll tend to get mushy. It's better to cook it in a pan. Spray your pan and do a little olive oil and brown your chicken and then kind of cover it and let it simmer.
One thing they don't recommend from a food safety standpoint is that you put that frozen meat, whichever it is, chicken or any of the other ones we're going to show you, don't put that directly in a slow cooker because it takes so long for it to cook that you potentially could have some greater chance for having bacterial growth. So if you're using it fresh, that's great, or if you thawed it, that's great if you use slow cookers, but don't put the frozen straight into the slow cooker.
This is raw chicken breast, and that's what's going to be in the bundle, boneless chicken breast. This next recipe is really quick and easy. It's simple. It's pesto sauce, and this is made out of nuts and basil. It's kind of an Italian herbs mixture, but it's already ready. We're just going to throw this on our chicken. That's quite a bit. But right there. It's kind of like a marinade. It's kind of like a marinade to season up the chicken. It's a really fresh taste. And I would bake this. I would bake this in the oven, let it cook for a while, and then probably the last 3 minutes of the cooking, I would do some, maybe some mozzarella cheese on top, and you could serve it over spaghetti. It's kind of an Italian dish, but it really is a fresh change up from, you know, chicken strips, chicken bites, whatever. I'm gonna say that was one entire chicken breast, and that's probably about a pound, and I probably used a fourth of a cup of pesto.
So one of the things, you know, chicken is one of those meat products that people are always kind of wary about because salmonella, just because of the way the chicken is, it's built, there's a greater chance for salmonella. So when you notice that Mary was using a fresh cutting board, one of the things you always want to be sure to do is not use raw meat on the same cutting board as you would with your vegetables or whatever else you're going to put in there. So just be sure that those are separate. And then another important thing for all of us is to watch what they call the danger zone. So if any protein foods are held between 40 and 140, for the longer the period of time, the greater the chance for bacteria to grow.
Right.
So that's why, like she said, either you're going to bag it and cook, you know, and put it in your freezer, or you're going to cook it right away. But you don't want to have it in that danger zone.
Right. Yep. And then we'll switch out these, the knives and the cutting boards, so no cross contaminations.
And chickens, as you know, chickens, actually it's considered now, I guess, the #1 meat product that's eaten in our country. So you're probably going to be beyond what you get here in your freezer. You probably eat it frequently, and it's a great low-fat choice. So the place where the real fat is in the chicken is really what's under the skin. So we've got skinless chicken breasts, so you've already started with a really nice low-fat, high-protein choice. So these are all things that we're showing you are, you know, obviously making recipes that can be made from scratch. You know, all these things are going to be healthier for us because they've got less sodium and less filler and less preservatives. And sometimes I think, I know when I started cooking, you kind of feel like you have to do it perfectly the first time, or you get a little hesitant to do it, and you're trying to take care of kids or grandkids and trying to get them to activities. But really, it only takes a couple of ingredients often, and putting them in a slow cooker, or even like Mary just made. She's got already 2 chicken dishes done that you can put in your freezer, and then you pull it out, and all you have to do is quickly make it that night or put it into your slow cooker before you leave for work, and it's ready to go. So I would just say be very patient with yourself and realize that there are no bad choices. Try some of these things and you'll find out that they really don't take any longer or maybe less time than if you had something out of the box. So, and again, what Mary literally did, you guys, is she looked at her spice rack, she looked at the fridge, and she pulled a couple things out of it. So you might have a little bit of celery left over, you might have a little bit of tomato, you might have a little bit of this or that. Try using that, because that combination might be something that you go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that was so tasty together. So you can use recipes, but you can also just kind of do your own thing and just see what happens when you try it.
Yep, okay, what we're doing here is dicing the chicken. We're gonna pre-make this for probably a wild rice, brown rice, regular rice, or a homemade noodle, or some frozen noodles. But we diced up the chicken like so. And then we're gonna add these. This is about a good tablespoon of pepper. You could use a little bit more if you like pepper more. And this is about a half of an onion and probably a half a cup to a cup of celery. We're gonna add those. We're gonna add those, and we're gonna add some chicken base.
So another thing that we're doing here we are using some traditional foods. that, you know, ancestors would have used. So, I mean, there would have been potentially some kind of bird. It was probably pheasant, or could have been grouse, I think. There could have been a turkey, could have been a variety of different, maybe, you know, wouldn't have been chicken right away, but any kind of bird that you could use. And the hunters were in the family, so that was coming home. Wild onions were available in the Winnebago area. Also, as we know, buffalo, mushrooms, beans, wild beans were here. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that not only is so healthy because it's whole food, but it also brings up the opportunity to point those things out with our kids and grandkids. Okay, so Mary made up these nice packs for you, examples of great chicken dishes. You might be eating one tonight, or if you're going to keep it in your fridge, you really don't want to keep these in the fridge for longer than up to 2 days. If you put it in your freezer right away, you do not have to put something else around this. But what you want to think about is, how is it going to be packed? And the more air that's around it, the quicker it will freeze it. But if it stays that way, not packed tightly, there's more chance to get freezer burn. Freezer burn is not something that's going to be detrimental to our health. It's just, as we all know, if we've had something that was freezer burned, it's not the tastiest thing. So if you do happen to get freezer burn and you take it out, just cut that off and continue to use the food. You don't have to throw it out. Just an opportunity to talk about your freezers. You're getting new ones, so we anticipate they're going to last for a long time. But if you happen to have one at home that's not so new, that you're still using, like the top part of your fridge or the bottom part of your fridge, if we should have electricity go out, what you want to do is not open that door if you don't have to, because it can hold that food, if you don't open it, for 24 to 48 hours without having any worries. What you want to look for is, are there ice crystals in it when you do reopen that freezer? And if there's still ice crystals, then you can actually let it freeze right back up, or you can cook the stuff. But you don't want to see it like it is here when you open that freezer up if it has been frozen. That means that that freezer got room temp, and the stuff in there is going to be questionable.
It might have been the power was off for more than you anticipated.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Next, we're going to move on to kind of a healthy technique of preparing bacon. So we're going to trim the biggest parts, the biggest fatty parts of the bacon, because this stuff, you see the form it's in now, it's really solid. So after we cook it, you know, we end up with bacon grease sizzling in our pan and stuff, but that stuff, when it's digested, it's going to go back into your body and take this form again, and that's where we have clogged arteries and this and that happening.
A lot of saturated fat. But bacon is, you know, the thing about bacon is it is a very pungent, great flavor. So once you get that extra fat off of there, and then you use it, however, in a dish, whether it's, you know, green beans with a little bit of bacon bits, or some kind of a, you know, some other type of a vegetable or a starchy type of dish, you can use a really small amount and actually get a really great flavor to your dish. So, and Mary's just preparing it now. We're using parchment paper, which, if you haven't used that, it's another great way to help your cleanup be a lot less rigorous. And so, just going to put it in and bake it, right, Mary?
Right. Yep. This is like, it's a good technique to bake bacon in the oven. If you can, cover it with foil, then uncover it so it'll get brown and crispy. But it's just a lot easier, especially when you have children about stuff, when you're messing with bacon. Yeah, and cooking with fish. Yeah. So we're going to put it up to about 350 for about 10 minutes, and we'll see where we go. I'm going to go on high. We're going to put that on high.
And when I do it at home, I don't know about you, Mary, but I put it on 352, and I do it for usually 20 minutes, and then I flip it to the other side. And it just kind of depends on the thickness. I don't know how long it takes, but you know, you want to, like she said, you want to let that grease drip out, and then when it comes out, then you can use paper towels or something to get the extra off. So another thing for us to just kind of share is, you know, how important cooking methods are, because along with the different seasonings that you can put on things, if you cook the meat slower, it's going to, and at a lower temperature, it's going to give more time for that fat to drip out of it. And, you know, one of the things to think about too with that is you can always cook it normally, and just to reduce the fat content, you can, if you then put it back in the fridge to use for another day or another dish, when you put it in the fridge, the extra fat's going to come to the top, and then you can save all that delicious beef juice or chicken juice, you know, for a broth or a soup or something. So think about not only what you're doing for that initial dish, but how can I then incorporate what's left over into something that lasts the rest of the week, like a casserole or soup, like I say, or again, try to make it easier for your family so that every night you don't have to start from scratch. You've got some things that you've got in the fridge or freezer to use for the next couple of meals.
So next we're going to do the rump roast. I split it in half just so it'll cook a little bit more evenly. This back piece back here is like for flavor. We kind of don't want to serve that to our people, but we're going to throw this in here. And this is onion powder. We're going to throw onion powder in there. And we're going to do Montreal seasoning. It's kind of garlic based, but it's really flavorful, works good. And these are bay leaves. We're going to throw those in there too. And this is ready to go. And I would say, I would use a slow cooker on this, otherwise in the oven. But if I were to put it in the oven, I would rub that in there deeply, and then I would, or put it in the center where I made the incision. I would put all that inside there, and then put it on a rack, and then cover it, cook it, and then uncover it, and let it cook a little bit more so you can have a little crispiness around the edges. Otherwise, in the crock pot for working people that are busy during the day, you could come home, put this on at noon, and then it'd be ready by supper time. Yeah, and just rice and some frozen vegetables. You've got supper in a matter of minutes.
So the other thing that we're talking about too is with that Italian, using that balsamic vinegar and the olive oil, is it's kind of an acid base. So another easy thing you can do with the rump roast that Mary just showed you is if you have in your cupboard like pico de gallo, or like some kind of, I've got some diced tomatoes that have a little bit of Italian seasoning in them, and sometimes I'll just put that over my roast or whatever it is in my crock pot, and again that acidity from the tomatoes will really help to tenderize the meat. So that makes it great because you've all got great high quality, we've got great high quality meat pieces for you. But if you end up, you see when you go to the store in the future and you've got some piece of meat that's a lean cut of meat and you're going, oh darn, this is going to be tougher than anything, try it and put on one of these acid kind of baths, like whether it's tomatoes or it's the vinegar, Italian dressing, and you'll be surprised at how much that will tenderize it up. Even like, sometimes I'll take barbecue sauce, I'll make my own, or I'll buy a bottle and I'll liquidize it and I'll put that on, and again, you've got another great way to make meat pretty easily.
So if you don't have any Italian seasoning at your home, we're gonna make a little mixture that's similar to Italian seasoning. We're gonna use this pepper and garlic. That's about a good tablespoon. Then we're gonna use some of the Italian seasoning, probably a good tablespoon or two, and then we're gonna do balsamic vinegar and some olive oil. So we're gonna take these 2 cups of meat, we're gonna saturate them with our seasoning mixture. And then we're going to add a splash of balsamic vinegar, red wine vinaigrette. That's probably less than a fourth of a cup. And then about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And there we have them. They're ready for We're just gonna use this freezer bag to get them saturated and seasoned, and then they're ready for the grill, or the oven, or the stove top. There you have it. When you're grilling, you know, all of the excess fat drips away into the fire. So,
yeah, that's kind of the key. Think of any way you do your meat, how can that fat drip away, and how can it not be caught by a thick breading?
Right.
Or else all you've done is just grab that fat in your arm, so to speak, and still eating it. So yeah, how can it rip off? Yeah. That's also a good example, actually, what Mary just made of components of a Mediterranean diet. Mediterranean diet is one that you probably have heard about. It's really healthy for us. It's got good oils, it's got veggies, nuts, seeds, fish. Again, those things in that, many of them are the same things as are in the traditional diet that folks here in Winnebago many years ago were eating. And that is the diet that's going to help everyone be healthy. So,
Yep, it's important to try to incorporate some type of fish into your diet weekly. We have a few more cuts of meat that are going to come in your bundle, and we're just going to talk about them. We're not going to demo on how to prepare them. We're just going to leave it out there for you guys to take a few suggestions from us. We're going to do this one. We're going to talk about making this into a chili, because it could be beef and noodle, it could be beef and hominy, it could be beef and rice. But we're going to suggest that you add some beans to it to make it a higher protein meal. So we're going to probably use this for a little marinade. We're going to rub some of this beef base into the cubes of beef, and then we're going to like maybe add 1/4 of a cup of vinegar, and then we're going to rub that into. We're going to let it sit, and then we're going to cook this, because the vinegar gives this buffalo and deer, it helps it to become more tender, and it takes out any type of wild flavor in the buffalo or the chicken, or the deer. And then we're gonna add like vegetables and beans.
Yeah, and think about, you know, making like we were just talking about chili. Probably most of our families will use ground meat, but you've got this stew meat, and you might try, if you haven't before, using it in your chili, and like Mary said, adding some beans, adding again tomatoes, as well as that vinegar she just mentioned, are of course going to help tenderize the meat, because the stew meat, you know, there's no fat to be cut off of that. It's already very lean, and so we want to have some way that's going to tenderize it, which is what a soup does, or a chili does, or putting vinegar on and marinating it in that, so that you really can enjoy the flavor of that as well.
Sue, what type of seasoning would you suggest that we would use for a chili? Like chili powder?
Chili powder and cumin is another thing sometimes people like to use. Some people like, even cilantro to be added to it. I know cilantro is kind of, it seems to be pretty specific to me when I've been talking with people. You either love cilantro and you like it on everything, or you don't care. But all those things are going to be good. And there's, this, again, coming back to those spices, it seems like they help metabolism. So they help the way that our body breaks down food. And they haven't gotten as much appreciation, I think, as they need to have, because those different things act as digestive agents to really help us, digestive system move ahead and to keep us healthy.
Yep, and for these cuts of pork steaks, you can trim a little bit around the edges where it's super thick. Not all of them are really thick, but the marbleization is like good in flavoring, but right here I see a lot of thick. I would trim that off a little bit. Take the bones out just for safety precautions, and maybe some fresh herbs. If we want to lay these out on a pan and then add fresh herbs, even cilantro, rosemary, basil, fresh herbs that will just seep into the meat as it grills or bakes in the oven. Yeah,
and like Mary said, we were talking about which ways can you help to reduce the fat and things. Any way, again, that the fat drips off. Another thing, if you do it in your oven, or you even do it on top of the oven, is putting some veggies in with that and a little bit of sauce again, and just slow cooking it, and then you'll get your veggies roasted at the same time as you get your lean meat. And when you cut off the fat, like Mary described, it's really still going to be a really tasty, low-fat kind of choice you can put with rice or noodles or You can put a couple potatoes in there too, cut them up and stick them in.
Yep, that's a quick, easy, efficient way to get an entire meal done at once. Yep. And as for the 2 ground meats, you are going to be receiving sausage in your bundles, but we're not sure what type. We have a ground sausage here, we have sausage links, and you'll be receiving ground beef, which meatloaf, again, in the oven, on a rack. A way that you can drain the excess fat away is good with the sausage. Some people combine them for meatballs if you're doing an Italian pasta bake or a spaghetti. And these are always just good in the morning. And again, we want to use the paper toweling to get the excess fat from the sausages before you feed them to your children.
There are a couple reasons to cook your own food. So one of them is that it's healthier because there are less additives. Another one is you get the natural flavor to appreciate when you cook from scratch. Why is it important to not have the preservatives or additives in it? Because in general, we're going to get more sodium or more sugar in our diet. And that is something that contributes to all of us getting high blood pressure. We have a greater risk for that, greater risk for diabetes or other things as cardiovascular disease, or any they're finding that there's more linkage now when we have a diet that's high in processed food, refined food, of also increased what they call inflammation in the body. And inflammation is the thing that in our blood vessels, then it's a greater chance to break down. So any way that we can eat more whole foods and add our own spices to them, like Mary's just done, and have more fruits and veggies and grains and all of that, along with whatever amount of meat that you eat, is just going to be healthier. And for young, little ones, our kids and our grandkids, they're building bodies. So it's just like when we build a house or someone's working on their car, or you're growing a garden. The nutrients that you put in from the beginning are incredibly important to how well you build that foundation, so that over the years to come and the wear and tear that bodies have, they're much more resilient. Kids are going to be stronger athletes. They're going to be able to think clearer, all those kinds of things when we have a diet that's more whole and less processed.